everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo. If you're tuning in, you are here to find out my predictions for the Academy Awards. These are not my personal preference picks. If you want to see what I would have awarded in all these categories and some superlatives, you can check out the Pickle Awards, which aired last week. But these are strictly my predictions based on a bunch of things. Could be my heart leading me a certain way, could be word of mouth, and could be stats in general. Stats play a big part in predicting races. It does not necessarily mean that all of these are going to be perfectly lined up with every single stat. Things break stats all the time. Parasite was the first ever international film nominee to win Best Picture, and people thought it was a curse that no international film would ever win. There is a streaming bias in the fact that no streaming film has ever won Best Picture, and this year it looks like our two frontrunners are both streaming films, and a little bit more on that later. But this is a very interesting crop of nominees. Some of these categories are very straightforward, some of them are not. I'm going to save two categories for last, one being Best Picture, since it's very up in the air right now, which is crazy because a few weeks ago it wasn't, and now it is. And Best Film Editing, which is also one of the craziest categories of the night. But here are my picks. If you want to follow along, these are my picks recommended to win your Oscar pools. You know, my March Madness bracket wasn't that hot this year. My Academy Award predicting might be a little bit better. You guys can make your own judgment on that. Tell me in the comments below afterwards what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you would pick for these categories, and what you predict in these categories, because I am inevitably going to get some of these wrong, but it's always fun to predict. And yes, I stand with the people saying that all 23 of these categories should be presented at the Oscars, not in commercial breaks, not before the show, while people are walking the red carpet. They should be part of the broadcast, part of the stream. I hope they learn that this year, and next year they remedy that. But I will be covering all 23 because all 23 are very important categories. Starting with Best Visual Effects. I mean, this one's a little straightforward. It's going to be Dune. I think Dune has the, hands down, the best visual effects here. No Time to Die's visual effects are very, very good, though. They're very subtle. But Dune's are very subtle in the fact that you can't even tell what is an effect and what is not, because it feels so real in the atmosphere around it. And I think that is going to be a huge win for Dune. I don't see it going any other way there. Best Costume Design. This is another one that I think is pretty much sealed up as much as it can be, and it's Cruella. This is a film about costumes. It's about the fashion industry, and I think while Dune is going to be the technical sweeper this year, I don't think it's going to get every single technical nomination. So I'm going to predict Cruella here because I really think they are going to award it for its use of costumes, not just its innovative design, but in compliments to the narrative actually being told in the film. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, kind of for a similar reason, I'm going with The Eyes of Tammy Faye. This is a film about a person who is known for her makeup. Makeup is a huge part of her life. It almost feels like when they awarded Ma Rainey's Black Bottom last year, you know, the makeup was such an important, integral part of that character, and I feel like this is another makeup heavy lead protagonist, and you have all those prosthetics trying to make her look a little bit thicker in the cheeks. Andrew Garfield has some stuff going on, old age makeup as they get a little older. I think it's an impressive makeup feat. I would have given it to Coming to America because I think it's really awesome to see how they transform Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall into these different roles where you cannot even recognize them. But I think also because this is a frontrunner in another category, I think The Eyes of Tammy Faye is going to take it. Now we get to a bunch of awards that I think Dune is just going to kind of, you know, steamroll through. Best Production Design, it could be Nightmare Alley, but I think it's still going to be Dune. I think Dune is one of the biggest, you know, blockbusters of the past few years that has dealt with world building and just creating this sense of atmosphere and a unique time and place. And I think that is going to be what, you know, tickles the Academy's fancy when it comes to production design. Best Sound, probably going to be Dune as well. I mean, the sound is also integral, and just the way the sound complements the score and vice versa, which is also why for Best Original Score, I'm predicting Hans Zimmer. I think the music and the audio experience is the key to making Dune work. It really helps establish this sense of place and gargantuan size that this film is in scope and spectacle. So I think it's going to win score, sound, production design, and probably cinematography as well. For Best Cinematography, I'm going with Greg Fraser. He is in the limelight, in the spotlight for The Batman that just came out as well. So I think that's just an extra added support for him. People are seeing The Batman and going, this guy's a really good cinematographer, let's award him. But that is the one category where I could see Power of the Dog picking up a cinematography nod. It is not as showy, as spectacle-driven as Dune is, but you know, it would be a historic win. Ari Wegner would be the first woman to win for Best Cinematography, which is really, really cool. And Power of the Dog is just getting so many nominations that it feels like it's going to pick up more than just a few, but I don't really know where. And I think for the safety of an Oscar ballot, if you want to just play it safe, which I am, admittedly, I'm going with Dune for all these categories, only because people who have not seen all these movies and who have seen Dune or even have seen pictures of Dune are going to say, oh, best cinematography, check. Production design, check. Visual effects, check. They're just going to kind of go for the film that is biggest and the most, awe-inspiring, the most wow factor. And Dune just has that size and spectacle going for it. But don't be surprised if Power of the Dog does pick up this award, but I am going to predict Dune here. Moving on to original song, if Encanto had come out a few months prior and We Don't Talk About Bruno had blown up and Disney had submitted that song instead of Dos Oruguitas, which is a beautiful song, but definitely not as memorable or quote-unquote iconic as We Don't Talk About Bruno, I think Encanto would have a really good shot here. Lin-Manuel Miranda would be getting his EGOT, but I don't think that's going to be the case because I think they submitted the wrong song here. I think it's going to be Billie Eilish and Phineas for No Time to Die. It's a Bond theme. A lot of Bond themes have won in the past for James Bond films. It's a song that came out way earlier than the film did because it came out pre-pandemic and then the film was delayed during the pandemic, so the song has been out for like 2 or 3 years and people have been listening to it and enjoying it for years and years and years. That just adds to the momentum, the fact that this song has been brewing for years and years and it doesn't have to go up against We Don't Talk About Bruno because it's not nominated. I think No Time to Die is going to be your winner there. Now to the short film categories. The shorts are always hard to predict. This year they might be a little easier than usual to predict. Starting with live action, I'm going to go with The Long Goodbye. This is the film that has the star power, and sometimes you just got to go with what the Academy is going to recognize and say, hey, I want to award that person. And in this case, Riz Ahmed, who was a nominee last year for his role in Sound of Metal as Best Actor, he was nominated. He wasn't going to win because Anthony Hopkins ended up winning. Chadwick Boseman was a favorite all season. Riz Ahmed was kind of like the number 3 all season, so I think people in the Academy who might have wanted to recognize him then can see this as an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to recognize him now because he's not only an actor in The Long Goodbye, but he is also a producer on The Long Goodbye, which means if Long Goodbye wins, he also wins, which I think is going to be huge for the Academy. I think they're going to really love to do that. Please Hold might win. I would not, count that one out just because it's a really cool sci-fi, almost Black Mirror-esque short, but I do think The Long Goodbye is going to get it. Best animated short, I'm going to go Robin Robin. Robin Robin's very sweet. It's cute. It's a Christmas film. It's an Aardman animation. Aardman, the very distinct animation style that has been awarded. Similarly, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit won Best Animated Feature a few years ago. They really, really like this style of animation. They like the kind of animation that makes you feel happy and sweet in a short film. It is accessible in Netflix. I think that's a big factor when it comes to these shorts, is where you can see them and how many people can see them, because admittedly, the Academy doesn't watch everything. It's kind of dumb that the Academy doesn't watch everything that's nominated, but that's just the nature of the Academy and how it works. So I think the one that most of them will have seen and will have enjoyed is Robin Robin. For Best Documentary Short, I'm going to go with The Queen of Basketball. I think a lot of the times when the Academy is voting, they want to go for who they want to see win this award or who they feel like should be recognized. And this film is about Lucia Harris, who is a basketball legend, a real trailblazer for women in sports in general, especially in the sport of basketball. And I think the voters are going to watch this and say, I want her to be recognized for her accomplishments in her career, in her life, and this will be the way to do it. Best Documentary Feature. This one could go toward Flea, which is a very interesting film because it's the only nominee ever in history to be nominated for animated feature, international feature, and documentary feature. So I think that could have a lot going for it, but the problem is, being in 3 different categories, it might split votes. People might want to throw Flea some support, but don't know which category to throw them the support in. I think if it's gonna get support in any of these categories, it's gonna be this one, but I still have to predict Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. This is the Questlove documentary highlighting a black music festival that happened the same summer as Woodstock, that has been criminally hidden in the archives and has not been a talking point in history, and it absolutely should be. This is a very good documentary of bringing awareness to such an important cultural event, but also just a feel-good movie. I loved watching the different snippets of sequences from this concert. It's just a movie that makes you feel good. It got the big Sundance Award. It is now on Disney Plus after being on Hulu for a long time. People are still coming around to it, still enjoying it. I don't think it's lost momentum, so I'm going to predict it there. Questlove is going to get an Oscar, and that is very exciting. For Best International Film, if there is one lock of the night, it's Drive My Car from Japan for Best International Feature, and that's because no film has ever been nominated for Best Picture and International Film and not won International Film, at least in the past few years. Parasite won Best Picture, also nominated for International Film, won international film. Roma, same thing, nominated for Best Picture, wins international film. Amor, nominated for Best Picture, wins international feature. If it's nominated for Best Picture and it's the only one of these 5 nominated for Best Picture, it's probably gonna win. I just, there has been no statistic to prove otherwise. Even though The Worst Person in the World picked up a screenplay nod, which is so cool, and Flea is nominated in a few other categories, I really don't see this going any other way but Drive My Car, which is a really, really great film you should check out. Best Animated Feature Film, I think this is where the first, like, really tough decision comes into play, because Encanto and The Mitchells vs. Machines have been the 2 head frontrunners this whole season. Mitchells vs. Machines just picked up an award at Critics' Choice. It won a lot at the Annie Awards. It won a lot more than Encanto did, but Encanto, it won the Golden Globe, it won the PGA, it won the BAFTA. I think Encanto is just a film that, I think because it came out later in the year and it was in theaters and it's now on Disney Plus and the whole We Don't Talk About Bruno thing is going viral, I really think it has the edge here. But there is one stat that does make me very sure that Encanto is going to win, and that is that every single animated film Oscar winner was nominated at the Golden Globes. Mitchells vs. the Machines was sadly not nominated for the Golden Globe, meaning if Mitchells vs. Machines were to win, it would defy a 20-year stat, or however long this category has been around, and I just don't see that happening. I think for a film that maybe came out later in the year, had a bigger surge, maybe, but because this film came out so much earlier in the year, and while it does have a really great following and fan base, I think the Academy is just more inclined to go for Encanto, and that stat just makes me a little hesitant to predict Mitchell, so I'm going to predict Encanto there. Now moving on to the Screenplay Awards, and these were 2 awards that the whole season, everyone was like, okay, it's going to be Belfast and Power of the Dog for original and adapted. But as the weeks have gone on, as the months have gone on, the races have really changed. Starting with adapted, this seemed like Power of the Dog's to lose, but I think a lot of people are thinking, hey, Jane Campion's probably going to win for director. Let me spread the wealth somewhere else. And that's where we see the BAFTA and the WGA, and the WGA stands for the Writers Guild of America, both going for Coda. It's the most pleasant watch. It's gonna have the most, like, quote-unquote Oscar moments in terms of, like, audiences remembering the moments that made them cry, made them emotional. There's also all the sign language and all the captioning that is woven throughout the Coda screenplay that I think is just another thing that it has that a lot of Academy voters are going to cling on to, the fact that there's also that written into the screenplay. So I really think this is Coda's to lose at this point. Just those 2 awards, it won BAFTA and WGA. I'm not going to go against that. The original screenplay category is where things get really, really hectic and really, really crazy, because all season Belfast was kind of the front runner in this category. It won the Golden Globe, but then you have the BAFTAs, and Paul Thomas Anderson wins for Licorice Pizza, and everyone's saying, great, he's going to win his first Oscar for this. Both those guys, Branagh and Thomas Anderson, are overdue people by the Academy. They've never won an Oscar, and they've been nominated for so many different things that it's probably going to come down to one of them. Oh, but wait. After the BAFTAs, after Licorice Pizza wins, the WGA comes in, awards the win to Adam McKay for Don't Look Up. This was supposed to be the place where Licorice Pizza was supposed to win and seal up the deal, but then Don't Look Up wins. So now it becomes a 3-way race between these 3 films. And then when the anonymous ballots come in, which are these ballots that they collect after Academy voting has ended, just from different branches to get a sense of what some of the voters' headspaces were thinking when casting their votes. And all the ballots, a lot of them had Worst Person in the World, which I admittedly think is the best screenplay by a mile of these 5. And maybe that just has the most passion behind it. So now, what started as a 2-way race between Belfast and Licorice Pizza has now added Don't Look Up and Worst Person in the World to this race. Sorry, King Richard, you're probably not in that mix, but those 4 screenplays, any one of them can win now. I don't think the stats are necessarily on Worst Person in the World side. I think Don't Look Up winning a last-minute WGA could be an indicator, but again, Belfast wasn't eligible. If Belfast was nominated for the WGA, people are saying it probably would have won. And I think the WGA was really going to be Licorice Pizza's chance, and it didn't get it. So I'm really thinking that the Academy's tide is shifting away from Licorice Pizza and back onto Belfast. So that's what I'm going to predict, because I think Belfast has performed well at the Academy Awards. It's gotten a lot of nominations, and I think it's going to be awarded somewhere, and this seems like the only place it'll really be a big contender to win. I think Licorice Pizza, it had a big day at the BAFTAs, and then when it came to Oscar nominations, it only got 3 Oscar nominations for 3 of the big ones, picture, director, screenplay, but it didn't get any other nominations, so a lot of people thought it underperformed, myself included. So I think because Licorice Pizza in general underperformed, and it didn't win the WGA, and Belfast has just been kind of a consistent frontrunner up until like the last few months, I think Belfast is going to win here, so that's my prediction. The 4 acting awards, I can kind of go through three of them pretty quickly. Supporting actress, it's going to be Ariana DeBose for West Side Story, an iconic role made famous by Rita Moreno, who won the Oscar for this role for Anita. Ariana DeBose is going to do the same thing. For supporting actor, we thought it might have been Cody Smith-McPhee's Race to Lose early on with the Globe, but then ever since SAG and BAFTA and Critics' Choice, Troy Kotsur has just been winning everything. So Troy Kotsur probably going to win for Coda, also because it is now emerging as a Best Picture frontrunner. And Best Actor, Will Smith has been the frontrunner all season, has been winning everything all season. I think Will Smith has the story. It is his third nomination. This would be his chance to win after, awarding such a great career, and he is good in King Richard. For Best Actress, I think, like Will Smith, there is an actress here who's nominated 3 times, is overdue, and a lot of people are predicting her, and that is Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Also, because it's a frontrunner in makeup, there's that idea that, makeup and Best Actress can go hand in hand, and it wins 2 awards, which would be pretty predictable, and I think I'm gonna still predict it, but of course, those anonymous ballots make me scared, because a few years ago, the anonymous ballots came out, and a lot of them were so pro-Parasite that a lot of people started jumping ship and predicting Parasite for Best Picture, and it ended up winning because of those anonymous ballots. Same as Anthony Hopkins beating Chadwick Boseman. A lot of people predicted that upset because of the anonymous ballots. The anonymous ballots are very heavily in favor of Penelope Cruz, who did not get any precursor. She wasn't nominated for BAFTA, SAG, Critics' Choice, but a lot of people like her performance, and in a field where this whole category has been so crazy all year, where none of these 5 women were nominated for the BAFTA, a few of them not nominated for SAG, it's really, really hard to predict this category. And I think Jessica Chastain, only because she won SAG and Critics' Choice, that's kind of like 2 notches on her belt. I'm gonna go with Jessica Chastain, but those anonymous ballots make me a little weary to pick it, only because Penelope Cruz is beloved by the Academy, and she could very well win her 2nd Oscar here. Moving on to Best Director, and this one is pretty straightforward too. If there's another lock next to International Feature for Drive My Car, I think it's Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog for Best Director. I think this could be a situation where someone has won literally everything that year, kind of like Chloe Zhao did last year with Nomadland. She has won everything, and even though some people have criticized her Critics' Choice Award speech where she, brought up the Williams sisters, you can look it up. I don't want to get into it right now, but some people are saying that might have lost her some votes, but by then some people had already voted, and I think enough people had voted and enough people had their minds set on who they were going to vote. I really don't think that changed much of people's opinions. If they vote for someone else, I don't think there's a clear number 2. They could vote for Paul Thomas Anderson, they could vote for Kenneth Branagh, they could vote for Steven Spielberg. Who knows? And I think because of that, I think Jane Campion will be just fine. Now the 2 categories that I have no idea what I'm going to do with. First, starting with Best Editing. Now, Best Editing, the past few years, certain trends have gone up and down. The editing awards, the Eddies, as people call them, used to predict these awards pretty often. It wasn't always 100%, but the Eddie Awards this year gave, for Best Drama, they gave it to King Richard, and for Best Comedy or Musical, they gave it to Tick, Tick, Boom. But then there's a stat, and that is that the last huge chunk of Best Editing winners were also Best Sound nominees. And King Richard is not a Best Sound nominee, neither is Tick, Tick, Boom. The 2 Best Sound nominees of this category are Dune and Power of the Dog. So now you kind of got like a 4-way race, kind of a 3-way race between Dune, Power of the Dog, and King Richard. So then you just have to look at what is the most likely to win Best Sound, and that is Dune. Great, so Dune should be the front runner because, as we've seen with Ford v Ferrari, and then again last year with Sound of Metal, sound and editing kind of link up most of the time. They kind of go hand in hand. So great, Dune's gonna win. But then Dune doesn't win BAFTA, Dune doesn't win Critics' Choice, and Dune doesn't win the Eddie, which makes a lot of people concerned. How is Dune going to win this award if it hasn't won anything? Same with Power of the Dog. It's a question of, do I just go with King Richard because it won the Eddie Award? Or do I go with Dune or Power of the Dog because of the sound stat? And it's really just picking which statistic you want to go with. Last year, I said, Trial of the Chicago 7 won the Eddie Award. I'm going to predict it over Sound of Metal, and I immediately regretted it, and it went to Sound of Metal. So I'm not going to regret it this time. I almost went with King Richard, but in my mind, I'm just thinking, Dune, it's going to win Best Sound. I think sound and editing have been going hand in hand. I'm going to predict it. If I'm wrong, and it's something like Power of the Dog or even Tick, Tick, Boom or King Richard, I won't be surprised. But I'm going to go with Dune only because sound and editing sometimes go hand in hand. And like I said earlier, in terms of the technicals, it's kind of a safe bet to just bet Dune across all these categories, except for costumes and makeup, only because if someone just looks at their ballot and hasn't seen all these movies and just wants to award the biggest technical juggernaut of the year, they're just going to put Dune, 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 Dune all the way down. Lastly is Best Picture. And here's a category where Either way, no matter what happens, stats are going to be broken. I mean, The Power of the Dog went into this with so many nominations. Everyone thought it was going to be a shoo-in to win director, screenplay, picture. Now I'm predicting Coda for screenplay. I'm still predicting Power of the Dog for director. So is this going to be a scenario where Power of the Dog only gets director? Be the first time since, I think, The Graduate in 1967 that a film has only one director and nothing else. And I just don't like that stat. Coda has just had this really great surge in the past few weeks. It won the SAG Ensemble Award. It won the PGA, the Producers Guild Award, and Best Picture is an award for the producers. So a lot of people are backing behind Coda. But then there's another factor, and that is the streaming factor. And I know everyone's going, oh shoot, he's going to predict Belfast. I'm not going to predict Belfast, but if Belfast wins, it will be because Power of the Dog and Coda are both streaming films, and the Academy just isn't ready to award a streaming film for Best Picture. I think this is going to be the year where a streaming film does win. But is it going to be Apple? Is it going to be Netflix? So let's break this down and go through a few more stats, and let me tell you what I think will win after looking at these stats. Since the preferential ballot system was established in 2009, meaning the 5 to 10 film ballot system where you, instead of picking just your number one, you rank all these films and it's based on a series of rankings to determine the winner. Since then, the past 12 winners have all received a DGA nomination, which is a Directors Guild nomination, have all received a Golden Globe Director nomination, and have all received a Golden Globe Screenplay nomination. Now, Power of the Dog did pick up a DGA nomination, it did pick up a Golden Globe Director nomination, and it did pick up a Screenplay at the Golden Globe nomination. Coda did not pick up an award nomination in any of those. That's already 3 strikes against Coda, 3 points for Power of the Dog. Now, Best Editing. 11 of the past 12 winners have all been nominated for Best Editing. The only one that wasn't was Birdman, and that was a different case scenario because it was one take. Some of the Academy thought that didn't require any editing, even though I think it had to do more editing to make it look like one take. Anyway, Birdman didn't win that, but 11 of the last 12 have. Coda, not nominated for editing. Power of the Dog is nominated for editing. Then, 11 of the last 12 have won at least a BAFTA for Best Film, a Critics' Choice for Best Film, or a Golden Globe for Best Film. Now, Power of the Dog won Best Critics' Choice, BAFTA, and Globe. 11 of the past 12 have won at least one of those 3, and Power of the Dog happened to win all 3. The only one that didn't win was Moonlight, and that was the year where La La Land was sweeping everything. Another stat is that 10 of the last 12 have been nominated for Best Director. The only 2 Best Picture winners that have not been nominated for Best Director since the preferential ballot system were Argo and Green Book. Those 2 films won, but of course Green Book did have the PGA, and it had a lot of those other stats to back it up. Argo, same thing, had a lot of those other stats to back it up. The only thing Coda has going for it is the PGA, the SAG Ensemble, and, of course, natural momentum. Just people catching on to the film and really liking it and just wanting to change their minds. And I think this could be a year where Coda just jumps all those hurdles and ends up being your winner and defies all those stats. And if that happens, then I probably won't look at these stats ever again, because it just goes to show we're in a different time now. The whole voting system's so different. The whole period of time between nominations and awards is so much more elongated, that so much more shenanigans, I should say, are bound to happen. But just looking at all those stats, it's just impossible for me to imagine Coda defying all of those stats at once. You know, if a film missed maybe 1 or 2 of those big stats, I would have been like, okay, maybe it can still overcome it. But the fact that Coda just hasn't received any of those nominations that so many of the other Best Picture winners of the past year have, it really puts Power of the Dog heavily back in favor. And I know Coda is getting the recent momentum, but look at the 2006 race. And I know this wasn't a preferential ballot system, but The Departed was the film made by the veteran who was overdue. It was Martin Scorsese, who hadn't won yet for Best Director or Picture, and this was finally his chance to win for Best Director and Best Picture, and he wins. But Little Miss Sunshine was the small little indie darling straight out of Sundance that happened to pick up Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, and then was one of the favorites to win Best Picture but ended up losing to The Departed. You look at this race, what is Coda? Coda is a festival darling that premiered at Sundance, is probably going to win Best Screenplay, and is going to win Best Supporting Actor. So I really see this being the Little Miss Sunshine to Power of the Dog's The Departed. How many times in the last decade has the frontrunner emerged very late in the race and lost? 2015, The Revenant was the frontrunner going into the night, lost to Spotlight, which was a contender earlier in the year. Roma loses to Green Book. 1917 loses to Parasite, and I know a lot of people were excited because Parasite was considered the underdog, but I think in this case, now that Coda's gotten so much of a momentum surge, I think Power of the Dog, like its name, is honestly now the underdog. And I think a lot of people are going to be going into this night so Coda heavy, and I love Coda. I'm very happy for its fans if it does win, but I think now that Coda's become the top dog, I think Power of the Dog now winning would be the surprise, when I think all along Power of the Dog has just kind of had award season in the palm of its hand. The good news is it's not a year like last year where Nomadland just won everything and it was so predictable. It's not a year like that. Like, there is an actual genuine race for the biggest film of the night. And I think that's exciting. No matter who wins. If Power of the Dog wins, I'm going to be very happy. If Coda wins, I'm also going to be very happy, because I think those two films are worth recognizing for their own merits. You know, Coda would be a huge win for a film that's so little, for a Sundance film that premiered so much earlier in the year. It premiered in Sundance all the way back in January, and then didn't go on Apple TV till August, which is still pretty early for, you know, Academy Award season standards. And in Power of the Dog, I mean, the last time a gay Western was supposed to win was Brokeback Mountain, and people are still outraged that Brokeback Mountain lost. This would be kind of righting that wrong, and I know they're two separate, totally different films, but, you know, just a film that tackles, you know, LGBT themes in the midst of this, you know, kind of revisionist Western template, it's definitely a different choice for the Academy. I don't think either of these is a very safe choice by the Academy standards. Either way, it's going to be very exciting to see what happens. So if you're filling out your Oscar ballots, let me know down below what you have the same as me, what you have different, and what are you most looking forward to in the Oscars. Please stay tuned, because after the Oscars, I will be giving my thoughts on the overall ceremony, some of the biggest shocks and surprises. And then next week, you can also expect an episode of Picture This, where myself and my co-host Chad Webb will be ranking all of these 10 nominees and talking about them in depth, just as our final capper of the films of 2021. So stay tuned on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.